in any acquisition, anyone that I've ever been a part of, almost entirely, I can probably say entirely, has some kind of a earn-out provision. It's called, right? And where the more critical you are as the principal of the business you're selling, the longer typically that is, and the more your payout is a function of you delivering some things along the way, because they know it's you is very valuable. So you got to make some kind of effort to transition that. And so, for me, that was effectively my earnout, and that's how they got the knowledge and the value out of what it is they were paying me, was that I was enabling their team and I was still there to kind of help along the way.
We are back with another episode of the Cold Start Project, the podcast about the unexpected challenges of scaling. We have been punched in the face so that you don't have to be. And my guest today is Peter Hoskins, founder of RareCurve, which we'll talk about a little bit. But I wanted him on because he has created and sold several different kinds of businesses. And the one we're going to focus on today, although we may dance around and talk about other experiences that he's had, is a process-based business. It wasn't a business with actual people in it, for example, other than himself. And so he was able to package this up and sell it. And this story, I believe, will be valuable for you. So, Peter, thanks for being here.
Oh man, I'm a huge fan of yours, Jason. Thanks for letting me be here.
Good deal. So tell us a little bit about the business that you sold. What was it? How did you create it?
So accidental consulting business. After I sold I had done a lot of technology, software, kind of traditional startup, if there's such a thing as traditional now in startup world, venture funded style businesses. And after I sold the fourth one, people started knocking on the door, other entrepreneurs, and said, "Hey man, what do you know? What can you share with me? You got any secret sauce that I can have?" And started consulting and helping. And I also had some of the investors and VC firms and whatnot that were referring their portfolio CEOs to me to say, "Hey, you got to meet Peter. Why don't you guys talk? See if there's something to do." So I kind of stumbled into a consulting business and started running, and over time started codifying that into the work that I was doing and just talking to people, and then little projects here and there, turning that into actual structured kind of offers or structured processes. And so I kind of had a process, but the business of consulting had zero process. So I tried to be a little bit more efficient, other than just getting on the phone with people, and deliver more value to them and try to actually just be helpful. And so that kind of turned into some products and service-based offerings and workshops that when people would call or knock on my door, I'd say, "Yeah, I can help you in these ways, and this is kind of how that would work." And so there was almost an asset. I took the intellectual property that I had and turned it into something more tangible: a schedule, tools, templates, a process, and I was delivering it that way.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is, first of all, you had a distribution channel of leads coming to you from your network, right? Very important. That business would not have existed without that. And
that's absolutely true.
I am interested in a few minutes when we discuss the sale of this. You would have to duplicate that for the seller, right? And you can't just rip off a piece of Peter and give it to that guy and say, "Okay, now all you VC incubator people go over there," right? Because a piece of me is over there. So we'll cover that. And then also I hear that you are productizing the service. You've seen several things happen again and again and again, that people kind of show up at 4th and Elm and want to go to 73rd and Wintergreen. And you're like, "Okay, I'm going to build the bus that takes them from there to there." And look, they keep showing up, these people in a similar position. So you're not having to reinvent the wheel after a while. Okay. So how did you go about documenting these processes? I mean, when was it? Can you pin down like how long into the business where you were doing this again and again, where you went, "Oh, I'd better write this stuff down"?
Probably the 5th time, because I'm a slow learner, evidently. It took, after doing the same thing 5 times in a conference room in front of a team of a new company, an early stage company, I realized this this is wasteful. It's dumb. You know, I'm repeating the same things, a lot of the basic kind of fundamentals of what it is that I'm doing. And so that's when I tried to say, all right, how can I have a kind of effectively my product culminated in a workshop. And so all of that preparatory work, all of that thinking and vocabulary and process and explanation and centering their mind in on what it is we were going to tackle and what the outcomes were that we were shooting for, and just all of that kind of emotional, psychological, informational stuff that I was repeating over and over and over again live in person, having to get on an airplane a lot of times to go and do that. That was kind of where I first started. So, all right, I'm just going to record that and write that stuff down, or whatever the right form was to deliver the message. And so it took me relatively soon, but it was more because I didn't want, I was like working harder than I wanted to and needed to, and at different parts of the process. So that was kind of the first big tranche, was that preparatory work. And the 5 clients in, I got smart.
So, and you were documenting using what tools?
Really Google Docs to start.
Okay. Yep.
I literally, well, and that's true. And I also had a lot of tools from previous businesses and things that I had done that weren't necessarily genericized into a template or something that could just be copy and paste, duplicated. But the premise was there. So I went back and said, okay, how did I do this? How did I actually, map out, an MVP, minimum viable product process? What did we do? And I tried to come up with the milestones and the sequence, and because the sequence is critical. Do this before you do that, so you're not putting cart in front of horse and things like that. So I got a lot of that knowledge just written down, very much in outline form to start. And then because I don't like to write, and I surely didn't want to write volumes and volumes of words on it, I started recording me talking through different kind of sections. So Roman numeral 1, I would talk through that, have just a very simple, low production value video, but it was high content value. And that's where I started. And over time, that kind of got a little bit more organized. And some of the videos were a little too dense, and so you break those into 2, and you learn that over time. So yeah, really simple. And it didn't need to be any more complex than that. It's essentially the knowledge and the outcome that the person is looking for. They want their problem solved, and they want their question answered, and they, all the kind of the fluff and wrapping around that is really of no concern.
Right. I mean, my first sales training product back in 2011, 2012 was with my wife's 360p webcam on her tiny little laptop, because that's what we had.
Yeah.
I don't think HD had been invented yet. I mean, there was no 720p.
Oh my gosh.
But people loved the content. And so I want to hit this again because you pointed it out, and I know from the coaching world especially that I've been in for many years, a lot of coaches get hung up on the idea that, it has to look great and have this high production value. And also, how dare I give them a video instead of doing the carnival song and dance myself, right? Individually. And I actually got stuck with this for a long time too, back at say 2013, probably all the way through 2014. So for 3-4 years, I was delivering content live that I should have been delivering by video, because I felt that the buyer deserved the live performance, right? It's like they came to see Metallica at the concert, not the double live album, So just tell us a little bit about your experience in giving folks these videos and Google Docs and that after you'd created them, and their reception to it.
So I think that there's a little bit of a variability in the market, the nature of your audience, but when you're dealing with businesses, right? Substance over sizzle all day long. And so as long as it doesn't look, crappy, and even actually more important, the audio is good. Almost more important that you have, good audio. It doesn't have to, you don't have to go and spend $2,000 for a mic, but you have to spend $100 for a mic, and it has to sound good, right? So, a lot of times people will have like a light behind their head, and it'll turn them into a silhouette. So just the video quality has to be viewable and whatnot in the business world. But very quickly they jump they jump right to the content, because it's essentially you that they're buying, your knowledge, their expertise, your expertise that they want. And you're not in the entertainment business, which now if you're have very much a consumer style offer, which this wouldn't work. Like in YouTube is a fantastic example. The production quality for just a standard issue YouTuber is pretty darn good. I mean, it's shot well, it's lit well, the audio is good. There's actually edits and whatnot that go in, but there's more of an entertainment context there, not a content substance context.
Right.
So as long as kind of you deliver something that is viewable and hearable, you're good to go. Then you just tell them, okay, here's the process, and you're the authority. So you present yourself as the authority, and that's kind of how I did it. I said, all right, so we have this workshop, and I charged $50,000 for my workshop, so it wasn't cheap.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of times that they're going to think, I need the dude, man. I need you in the room because I'm spending a lot of money. But the dude can also stand up and be the authority and say, here's how we're going to get started. I'm going to send you a bunch of preliminary work, this homework that you and your team, you need to go through. You must go through this before we even get to the workshop. And I'm going to deliver this to you in video and documents and a variety of tools and questions and things that you'll have to think through. And when you go through that process and you can lead that, then you'll then kind of, and I would have a little checkpoint where they would effectively articulate some of the outcomes of what it is that we went through in the preliminary work, so that I could be more informed and kind of see where their thinking was, how progressed they were. And if they didn't do the work, they didn't watch the videos, because I know, I hit them up and say, okay, we're going to have to reschedule if you don't, and because it's necessary. And so you just essentially move the focus to the outcome of what it is that they want versus the stuff that they're getting in your service offering, which are videos and documents and templates and things like that. They want the outcome. So you just stay focused on that, and then getting them that outcome requires them to watch some videos.
Okay. So as long as you set the expectations correctly and keep yourself as the authority in the driver's seat, then you'll be fine.
Yeah. And staying focused on their outcome, saying, here's how you get there. Here's how you get that thing you want. Oh, cool. Okay. I'll do that. I mean, they'll walk through fire, if you get them to that outcome, regardless of what it is. So.
Right. Yeah. I was chatting with a new friend of mine who's a principal data scientist for a major AI company. And I was saying, we were looking at developing some kind of machine learning app. And I said, do we want to plug in something where there's a delay in delivering the results? Because in consumer-based online solutions, you click a button and they'll have literally programmed in like a 15-second delay to make the thing look like it's doing something, and yet it actually solves it in a few milliseconds, right? Yeah. So I'm wondering if, do we need this for here, especially if we're charging, like in the 5-figure range, right? And he said, Jason, if a bank or a financial institution is losing $2 million a month due to fraud, they want the solution now. They want it fast, and they're paying for it fast. So there's a lot of head trash floating around in coaches, in my mind, in coaches' minds, in business owners' minds, in everybody's mind about what these expectations should be like. And it's really important to remember that you are not your customer. Yeah. And it's an eye-opening experience. I mean, I've been doing this for 8 years, and I'm still learning stuff, right? Like I'm still surprised or uncovering new limiting beliefs and going, man, how long has that been kicking around in there, right?
Yeah, so, dude, you're totally right. This is a big one. The greatest gift you can give your client is the speed to result. If you can align everything that you do with getting them the result that they want the fastest and easiest way possible, return on effort, just as quick with the least amount of effort to get the maximum return, you're doing them the greatest favor in the world. But you talk about a limiting belief, and it's real, because it comes from this kind of legacy consulting, bill by the hour, I need to do the work to create the value mindset that is flatly a limiting belief in so many coaches and consultants and experts' minds, because I have to do something in order to generate the value. And if you sell it that way, if you just think about that, I'm going to sell you by the hour or by the project or some kind of a fee associated with me doing work, as opposed to selling you, I'm going to get you this result, then you have now associated what somebody is buying with you doing work. And now they believe that you believe, and they need to believe that that needs to be validated.
Right.
Heck, in the old school consulting world, there's a term for it. It's called thump factor. This is legit. It's when you hire a consultant, you want them to plop a huge stack of paper in the report on the conference room table and make a big thump noise to validate that you actually did the work.
That's great reminder for everybody.
And conversely, when you're selling the result, they want the result. So as long and the least amount of effort that you and they put into getting the result, the better. Everybody's happier that way.
Right. Okay. Just remember to sell it that way.
Yeah.
So based on the results, set up those expectations. Okay. And I think that's a competitive advantage also, to be able to say to the prospect, I have designed this, and we've gone through it many times with companies similar to yours to get you to the end result as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
At least
this is a huge limiting factor in a lot of coaching and consulting business. They'll have a good business and it'll be, $100,000 or $200,000 a year, right? They're fully employed. They've got a good salary. They're working for themselves. It's all good. But it's this limiting belief is the thing that holds them back from doing $100,000 a month. Because if they can get to $100,000 a year, I absolutely know they can get to $100,000 a month, because they've validated that there's a problem that they can solve. The market exists. Number two, they validated they actually have the ability to solve that problem, because people are paying them six figures to do that. Then it's a function of scale and leverage and doing things in a different way to not just do that in a year, but do that in a month.
Right. Yep. And folks who have paid attention to this podcast have heard me say ad nauseum, the way you do things now is not the way you need to be doing them to get to the next revenue plateau. You need to change it up. It's not more of the same. So here you are. You've created this accidental consulting business you're cranking people through. You've productized the business. You've documented those processes. You've optimized them because you've been through them. You've iterated them a bunch of times. Got a good set of videos, a good set of. That's going to be interesting to find out how you transferred that too. I guess they would have to reshoot it, but let's see. So how did you know this thing is saleable? What criteria and conditions existed that made you go? Also there was an emotional component, I know. So let's dig into that.
Well, yeah. So let's answer the first question. How did I know it was saleable? So I happened to get into so I was focused on startups, and they all were, pretty much all of them were venture funded. And I had some relationships in that community, and they then start talking and referrals started coming to me. And I had a couple of fairly sizable pockets in two very, very large venture capital firms of clients, because they were all saying, dude, you got to work with Peter. He can help. He totally helped us. So I kind of had these little centers of gravity within two different very large venture firms. And it was from that those venture firms started seeing results in their portfolio companies, which is good because they're making money. They call me up and say, hey man, can we do a deal where we kind of direct our portfolio to you and kind of refer you, or how would that work and whatnot? Not that they wanted a revenue cut by any stretch. They actually, not at all. It was just more of a, how can we organize this a little bit? And so I kind of started doing more and more with their portfolio companies, and it just kind of naturally progressed. And this is to where it gets to your second question of the emotional component of it. The work that I was doing was great, but I hated it. And honestly, I felt like it turned into a bit of a grind, because even though I was able to standardize and create leverage in what it is that I was doing, I still was traveling a fair amount, more than I wanted to. I was top tier on United and top tier on American at the same time, which is kind of nuts. And the nature of the work became a little it just wasn't as life-giving as it was when I initially started. And so I kind of started falling out of love with this.
Mm-hmm.
And my client, well, they weren't my client, but the VC firms, they were very interested in me doing more of it. So we started having a conversation about how can I empower their team, because they had us kind of a support infrastructure to help their portfolios succeed.
Mm.
And that became the kind of genesis of a conversation about me enabling them to deliver my workshops and do that over time.
Okay.
And they loved that because it put them more in control. And it kind of also is the segue into all the other questions that you had of how the heck did you pull that off and whatnot.
Okay. So criteria is repeated paying customers driven by influencers. You've got a system and you don't want to do it anymore. So at this point, I mean, I would have recommended that you slice off the piece that you like the most, right? Delegate everything else. And this is a mistake I made in my sales training business back in, say, 2012, 2013. I should have hired sales trainers to deliver these live sessions that I was selling like crazy at the time, instead of having me do them all, right? But I had it in my head, oh, they're hiring me, I deliver it my way. I should have been comfortable with those sales trainers delivering the content and adding their 20, 30% and their unique point of view on it, and it would have been fine, but stupid, you know.
Right.
Now it's, you know, it's many years later now, and I know better, but and you know, you have that VC team delivering the workshops and doing the grunt work that you don't like. And then you come in and look at the top level of the projects and go, okay, I like this one. I want to dig into this a little bit, right? I don't care about this one. You guys handle all that one, right? So why didn't you do that, for example? Let's ask that question.
It's exactly what I did do, Jason.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was over a 3-year period. So it was partly to relieve me of having to do the stuff that I really didn't want, but I still needed to be engaged in the transition of this process over to the internal team so that they could effectively do what it is that I was doing. And me also be able to kind of dive in and help in some little sticky points or help with clients that were really interesting and cool that I wanted to participate with. So that's exactly the process. So it was partly because of 3 years, but that was, you know, there was a big payday. They essentially they bought it through a retainer, and that retainer was really big, and the amount of time I had to put into it was really small. You know, and so the alternative to do it, kind of more, if I wanted to keep doing it, I would have to have done something similar to what you described. I'd have to hire people, and I'd have to train them, and I'd have to go through the same 3-year or some period of time process to enable others to do what it is that I was enabling the other company, the VC firm staff to do. And so it just, you know, and that's a trade-off. You take millions of dollars for sure, or do you know, have to and not a lot of work, and I can then go and actually set my sights on doing other things, or do I take it all on myself and try to build this up? So, and I chose an easier path, partly because of that. I kind of fell out of love with the nature of some of that work, and I know it's hard to get other people to, you know, to scale up and do things effectively as you can a lot of times, and so I don't know. I took the bag of cash.
Well, I don't blame you. So here you are. You've got now. Some people might come back and say, "Well, that's all great for you, Peter. You had this sweetheart deal with the VC groups and that." And what could somebody in a similar situation do? Because see, you in the process of answering that last question, you have answered a question I had earlier about what do you do about the videos. Well, there's no rebranding that needs to be done in this situation, right? They can use your videos. Let's say this is Peter. He created this system. He worked for us, but you know, it's like I don't know, working with a shark. The sharks have these things from Shark Tank where I've been to one. Damon Johns came to town a year or two ago, and you're not working with him, right? You're working with members of his team, right? And now Robert Herkovich is his is coming to town now, and okay, it's not for me. I went to just to see what they were doing, but so you could have done it that way. But if you had sold it to another private individual, there would have been some, not hurdles, but other longer term things. There are a number of advantages the way you did it. The VC people were not cash poor, and they weren't worried about cash flow, right? So they could afford to pay you every month or whatever it was that you had as your retainer agreement, right? Without worrying about it. If you had sold to a private individual and this was their main business, maybe you were doing a leveraged buyout or something, right? And they were paying you a chunk. Now you're dependent on them and their workability, and right? And it's risky. They probably would have had to reshoot all the video as themselves.
Well, here's the thing. So
maybe
over
not.
time, so over time, what we were able to do, because remember, these are companies that grow up, and I help them through a stage, and then they go to another stage, and so over time, it wouldn't just be my face, and there wouldn't need to be this pitch of, hey, there's this guy Peter, and he developed this methodology, and we're going to teach it to you.
Right.
We were able to feather that over time to where I still was involved and around, but the people that they were interacting with on an ongoing and daily basis were the staff of the VC firms, right? And so they became a very relevant coach in this process, and I became like additive or icing to it. And then over time, when you re-record those, the person who's on staff, it becomes the face, and so it is a bit of a blend, so that you can soften that. And so it really, in any acquisition, anyone that I've ever been a part of, almost entirely, I can probably say entirely, has some kind of a earn-out provision. It's called, right? And where the more critical you are as the principal of the business you're selling, the longer typically that is, and the more your payout is a function of you delivering some things along the way, because they know you is very valuable. So you got to make some kind of effort to transition that. And so, for me, that was effectively my earnout, and that's how they got the knowledge and the value out of what it is they were paying me, was that I was enabling their team, and I was still there to kind of help along the way. So that's true though in really any other. If you're selling any of the software businesses I was a part of, there was an earnout provision. Sometimes they can be as short as a year, but especially if you as the CEO are not critical day to day in the operations. But let's say you're the primary engineer, technical resource, the guy or girl who knows everything about how everything works. They're going to lock you up, because if you leave, then their value leaves, and they're not going to just let that happen.
Right.
So that's how you can kind of make that transition more seamless. Any sale, for the most part, of a private company, especially a smaller one, is going to have some kind of a transition period where part of the payment is a function of meeting certain things along the way. Sometimes it's revenue or fulfilling certain obligations.
So as the seller, how do you make sure that you don't buy yourself a job by doing this?
Well, I have in fact done that. My first company, I did that. Sold a company to IBM and bought myself a job. And that's not a bad thing, assuming things are, aligned. Motivations are aligned. There's a name for it. It's called an acqui-hire. They'll buy the company, but effectively they're buying the company so they can get the employees. And that happens all the time. It's not about revenue or customers or even the technology as it exists right now. They want to buy a team of people that knows something, that are leading a market or have some insight or genius that they want on their team to continue to forge, right? So that's an okay thing if that's what you want. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And really can be a cool thing. I've got a friend of mine sold a business for it was a great database business a long time ago for $20 million. Right? Huge win by any measure. Yeah. But he then stayed on at that company and made $200 million over the course of the next decade. So because, he got stock and options and became a part of a bigger thing. So there's nothing wrong with buying yourself a job if
you can arrange it like that. My fear would be getting sucked into more and more daily operations of that business. while wanting to move on to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
That's what I would want to extract.
That's in your terms, because you have to realize the buyer needs to get value out of buying your company.
Right.
They have to, and that's only fair and reasonable. And they're going to have some expectations or requirements on how that's going to happen. And you just do the best job that you can in boxing that in a way that you're comfortable with and feel is reasonable, so that you can go, okay, for the next year, I'm going to be stuck in the operational stuff. I'm going to have a job working for somebody else. But a year from now, I'll walk away with a big bag of cash, and I can go and do something else. And if you just rationalize that equation, then you're good to go.
Right. And yeah, so you've got to make sure that you're happy with the number on the other side. Let's get into business valuation. I mean, how did you arrive at that? How did they arrive at that?
Yeah, that is such a fluid thing. Now, in certain markets, it's not, especially like in public markets. If you're buying for revenue or customers, then there's market capitalizations and ratios that are publicly known that you can apply to different industry segments to get what is reasonable valuation for your company. Now, none of my companies have ever been sold that way. They've all been sold because of some other emotional or business need that they had. They felt like we need that, or and sometimes it's just because we don't want our competitors to get it. We need that because if we just buy it, we can sell it all day long to the existing clients we have. It's just like found revenue. So those types of sales are absolutely wonderful when you're on the sales side, because you're selling something that is far more valuable to them than it actually is to you. Like if your business as a standalone thing might do $1 million a year, but to a larger company that can plug you into their sales and distribution channel, it can make it a 10 or a 50 or $100 million revenue stream, very, very quickly. That's what you're doing is far more valuable to them than it is to you. And then you're golden, because you can then you get that hope value is what we generally call it. It's this premium on top of what truly your business is worth based upon revenue or assets or anything like that. And it's the hope that, or the belief that if we have it, we'll be able to do something different, more competitive, generate new revenue, have some efficiencies that is really valuable to the buyer. And then it's just kind of, what can you get? And by having a couple of people being interested in buying you have a market.
Right.
Then
right.
Now, way easier said than done. Way easier said than done.
I mean, how do you initiate this kind of thing? I take it in this situation, they came to you?
Well, it started with more of how can we kind of have more of a organized partnership? Okay. And then we did that.
You're expanding value for them and their portfolio.
Right. Okay. But the way that I went about it is not unlike any other corporate acquisition that might make sense. It's important, if you do have a desire to sell, that you are deliberately thinking about your exit strategy, right? Who are the acquiring candidates and why? What are their motivations? What do they get out of it? And then you, as a CEO, deliberately position yourself, and you can do it by striking relationships with their business development people, the corporate development guys or biz dev guys that actually do these deals. Focusing marketing efforts on the same niche, so that you actually, like I did, have a client roster that is relevant and overlapping with somebody that might want to buy you, and it gives you something to talk about, right? Think about the validation that is. Like, wow, if this little guy was able to go and work with 30 of our clients, but we could make it work with 300 of them. They then start connecting the dots for you, but you need to be deliberate about paving that path to an acquisition. And is it rarely do you just kind of heads down in your business and all of a sudden the phone rings and says, hey, I want to buy you. You as a CEO, it's part of your job. And if exiting, if selling is what you want to do, then you need to actually do that. You have to actually put the work into doing that, and corporate partnerships and forging relationships within those organizations, and then help thinking about the business case for them buying you. You actually help do that.
Right.
Makes them the light bulb go on for them, and then you start having an acquisition conversation.
Okay. So get in front of them, be deliberate. Imagine, yeah, like you put some advertising up in their marketplace. You keep showing up in front of them. That's gonna,
without question.
that's going to give you. It's who are those guys, right? I keep seeing them, and then maybe engineer a couple of stories to be spread around the industry.
Yeah, join their partner program, go to their annual events, develop relationships, all that kind of stuff is what is necessary to separate you from the noise and get into that, have that conversation.
Okay. People are going to ask, what level of number are we talking about here in total? I don't need the exact number, but for the total buyout.
For my company or just in general?
Yeah, for your
so the most recent one was 7 figures a year for 3 years.
Okay, nice. So don't have to work if you don't want to.
Right. And
you like to work.
Yeah, I do. And so there's that, and that's a little bit longer on the kind of the earnout range. And because I mean, hell, you could pretty much say almost all of the value was me, because I was the primary resource delivering it, and it was all stuff I knew. I was the author of it all. So to the degree that you're not that, then your earnout can be shorter.
Okay. And what kind of a time period are we looking at to lead up to from, hey, I'd like to sell this business, to, okay, we have a deal and the money starts flowing?
Probably 2 stages. One is your preparation, your positioning, you creating a market for yourself. That can take, easily a year or 2, or, or longer, depending on how successful, how quickly you're able to do that. So, but then once that legitimate conversation starts about an acquisition, the practical steps is easily 6 months. If there's like a burning urge, you're sitting in Mark Zuckerberg's backyard and he says, hey, I want to buy you for $18 billion. You can kind of get that deal papered really quickly. But failing that, the typical process is going to be a while, because there's lawyers involved, and they're doing other things. And that could take, 3 months to 6 months would be normal. Longer than that, deals that drag don't get done. So, and it's kind of practically really difficult to do it in less than 3, unless just have a team of people that do it, is go into a war room and make it happen.
So yeah, and reason I ask is I want you to give the answer rather than me to say the answer, because I want people to hear it from somebody who has done it demonstrably right here. And that it's not going to be an instant thing. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and go, I want to sell my business, and then get it done by the end of the week. It's not going to happen, even with a broker. It's going to take at least a season, and that's after you've done all that warm-up stuff. That fortunately for you, you had built into the business along the way, the process documentation, the stuff that we do at Cold Star Tech, the process documenting and then improvement, right, to get you to that point, plus the positioning, marketing. The folks can go get the book Oversubscribed, which is a great book about that concept that you were talking about needing 2 buyers, right, or 2 potential buyers. You don't need a whole horde of people. And in fact, that will actually drive your price down, having too many people involved, especially with an offer. But if you've got a small number of wealthy buyers interested, that will drive the price up. So
sure will.
Folks can go check out that book, Oversubscribed. Okay, payment processing. Did they just send you a check every month, or give you a bag of cash with a dragon, or wire transfer, or what? I'm curious.
Yeah, wire transfer.
Okay.
Just wire transfer, yeah.
Okay.
And it was there was an initial payment, and then an annual payment each year.
Okay, we're getting close on time here. I want to have you back again, and we can dig into some other directions in that. Before we head out, I want to ask you one more thing.
Yeah.
Comparing the sale of this business with another business that springs to mind for you that you've sold, what are the compare, contrast differences that highlight for you? Maybe even just one big difference with, say, a different business with employees, for example, or maybe a building or something involved.
The selling your expertise may be a smaller sliver. I can't really say that it was harder. I can surely say that the process of selling and getting paid a good amount was infinitely simpler than any other financing or acquisition that I did, or sale that I made of a more traditional company with employees and software and hardware or assets or capital. It just administratively, the level of due diligence that needs to be done is significantly greater in a business with employees and assets and whatnot. It just takes longer, and you just have to recognize that it's going to take time and mind space. And that's why I say deals that drag don't get done. You want to kind of compress everything up to a point where when you say go, you can just focus on doing what you need to do and get to a yes or no. No is the second best answer in this. The maybe is the worst answer, or the limbo state is the worst circumstance. So for most people that are going to sell a traditional business with employees, it's a lot more, just work and emotional mind space. So do everything you can to kind of compress that into all right, let's go get it done, or not, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Who should be talking to you today? What kind of situation should they be in? What level should they be at? What problems should they have?
I love working with experts, consultants, people that kind of did what I did, that want to do what I did. People that do what I do, that want to do what I did. So people that have an expertise, and they might be doing 100,000 or 200,000 a year in their consulting business or services business. So freelancers, consultants, coaches, a lot of course creators too. And they want to break out of kind of that rut of a grind. And they want to go from 100,000 a year to 100,000 a month. How do you actually do that without, giving your heart and soul? So those are the people that are my sweet spot, and I absolutely adore working with today. And they can reach me at rarecurve.com, and it's RARE RareCurve.com, because that's what we want to do, is build some rare curves for some entrepreneurs so they can grow quickly. Yeah.
Awesome. Hockey stick stuff. All right. My guest today has been Peter Hoskins of RareCurve. I'm Jason Kanigan, the founder of Cold Star Technologies, and look forward to talking to you in the next episode. Thanks for being here, Peter.
Thank you very much, Jason. Appreciate it.